Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crucial Conversations about Cognitive Diversity, brought to you by Bridges 2E Media and the 2E Centre for Research and Professional Development. My name is Maria Kennedy, and I have the pleasure of being your host. I'm a mom, an educator, and a change maker who has had the pleasure of working globally with an array of different students and their families. Today, we have the unique opportunity to discover tips for navigating the IEP process. I don't know if you have the same experiences as me, but it makes me feel confused, stressed, annoyed, and like I should just give up. And that was as an educator at the table. I know I'm not alone in those feelings, which is why I'm delighted to have a guest with me who is a real expert. She's going to share with us tips that will make the process less confusing and more manageable. I, for one, am looking forward to learning what steps should be taken, what our rights are, and how to leave those meetings feeling that you have advocated for your child and are on your way to getting their needs met. So, before we delve into today's topic, I'm delighted to share today's conversation with an amazing person who is doing so much to ensure that people understand their rights and are supported to demand services to meet the needs of their child. I am delighted to welcome Marisol Chianello. So please turn your camera on and introduce yourself, Marisol.
Hi, Maria. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Those were some very kind words, very flattering. Thank you so much, Maria. My name is Marisol. I am an attorney. I work for a nonprofit called Learning Rights Law Center. I am the director of their Tiger program. A little bit about my academic history. I graduated from UCLA back in 2000. I then went to law school, graduated from USC in 2005. It's hard to believe I'm going on 18 years as a lawyer. But what motivated me to go to law school was wanting to make a difference, wanting to contribute and somehow help, leave my mark. And so I immediately following law school, I started working for a nonprofit doing immigration refugee law. After that, I moved to a Los Angeles nonprofit practicing foster care adoptions and services. And now I have the pleasure of being at Learning Rights Law Center, where we help parents to navigate the special education system and to be advocates for their kids in getting education services. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Like I said, Marisol, you are a rock star. You truly are amazing, and the impact you are making in our lives, we can't thank you enough. So I'm going to introduce our other person. So So we also have a special guest, our interpreter, Sonia Hernandez. We are just so blessed. So Sonia, please turn on your camera and introduce yourself. I'm not hearing you, Sonia. You're super. Thank you so much, Sonia. So if you have questions for Marisol, please write them in the tab that says Q&A. So you can write them both in English or in Spanish. As you know, so both Sonia and Marisol will be able to read them and translate them for us. So remember, the sooner you submit your questions, the more likely we will have time to answer them. So we're not doing a set 10-minute Q&A at the end. We take questions all the way through because I know that you all have lots of questions and we want to make sure that we can get them all answered. So let's kick off then, Marisol. So what would you say was the most important thing that parents need to know about their IEP meeting? So going into it, what should they know?
I think that one of the most important things parents need to understand and remember is that they are a vital part of that team. They are an equal team member. I know that it can be very intimidating to go into a meeting and you're sitting at a desk with a bunch of district staff and experts and professionals. But parents know their child better than anybody else, and they are equal contributors, excuse me. Their knowledge is just as important as anybody else's, and they have the right to express themselves as much as the other people in the room. So even though IEPs, I understand, can be intimidating, I've gone to some as a lawyer and it's intimidating. But as parents, you are the voice for your children, and your voice matters as much as anybody else's at that table.
I think that's so vital. I didn't even think of that. I mean, I'm usually just cowering in the corner. So that's vitally important. Can we just can you just explain for us what the purpose of the IEP is? What does it give us? Why do we need one?
Sure. So the IEP is an individualized education program. It's a contract between parents and the school district that is created for children who are eligible for special education services. There are 13 categories of eligibility for special education services in California. A child must meet one of those eligibility categories, such as speech and language deficit, or autism, or intellectual disability, and that disability must impact their education. If that happens, the child is eligible for special education, and the law, which we call the IDEA, entitles each child to a FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public education. Appropriate, I like to emphasize that it's tailored to each child's unique and individual needs. So for example, you may have a classroom of 3 students with autism, but they all have varying individual needs. So an IEP is never going to look the same for 2 kids. It's always going to be tailored to what each child requires in order to make academic progress. And it is a contract between the parents and the school. So if the school says in the IEP, we are going to provide such and such service, we are going to do something, they're obligated to do that. And the IEPs run generally for 1 year, and then every year there'll be an annual IEP to update it and see what tweaks, if any, need to be made.
Oh, awesome. See, I didn't even realize, I love that word contract. I hadn't thought about it as a contract. I just get a sense sometimes that our LEAs don't want to provide the services. They don't kind of make you feel warm and fuzzy like, hey, come, well, let's give you these things. It's kind of battle, and I feel we have to fight really hard to get anything.
And that's why at Learning Rights and in our Tiger program, we always tell parents to get things in writing, put things in writing. If they want a service and the district is telling them that a service will be available, make sure it's in the IEP, because if it's not in writing, it's you have no evidence that it's supposed to get done. So you might talk at an IEP meeting, come to all these agreements, but unless and until it's actually memorialized in the IEP document, that it's not necessarily owed to the parent, and you can't hold the district accountable. So make sure that everything gets put into writing. There's a notes section at the end of each IEP usually, where if anything that the rest of the IEP missed that a parent really wants on the record, that's your place to get it in.
Oh, I love that. So get it on the record. We need it in writing. That's vitally important. I've often worried and wondered, and I'm sure other people have, what's the best way to prepare for the actual IEP meeting? I mean, are there things that you can ask for in advance? As a parent, should you be doing something before you go to that meeting?
Absolutely. That's a very important question, Maria. Thank you for asking that. Yes, preparation is key. IEPs are not something that you as a parent just want to show up to and have a conversation. You as a parent should empower yourself ahead of time to know what your questions are, to have your own opinions, and to be able to vocalize them. So what I do recommend is, if the IEP will be reviewing any assessments, ask for those assessments and review them ahead of time. As a parent, you have the right to request and receive your child's educational records 5 days after you submit a request. So if you know an IEP is coming up, submit a request for records so that you can get the assessments and review them ahead of time. Look at the assessment carefully. We do have, and I know that that's intimidating. Assessments can be very, very daunting. We do have at Learning Rights a teacher, Maria Liniero, who teaches parents what assessments are and how to read them. But the assessment is really going to be the roadmap. It's going to identify what are your child's strengths, what are their child's weaknesses, and where do we want to go from here. Read the assessments, know them. If there's something you disagree with, that's okay. You can say that during the IEP meeting. Just because they said something's the case doesn't mean you have to necessarily agree with it. So review the assessments and also review the last IEP so that you can sort of monitor what progress has been made. You can know what questions to ask in terms of, has my child met these goals? If they have, good. If they, how do we make it a better goal next year? If they have not, why not? What services can we do differently? So it's really a matter of becoming familiar with the information that you have and that the school district has, and owning that as yours, and being able to comment on it and reflect on it during the meeting.
I love that. Ooh, own it and comment on it during the meeting.
May I add a couple more ideas, Maria? I'm so sorry. Before I forget, as parents, you do have the right to record the IEP meeting. I've been in meetings where it's very overwhelming. Things get said, things get forgotten with time. So if you want to, if you're like me and you like to just sit and listen, don't take notes unless you really want to. It's totally up to you, but get that IEP meeting recorded so that you can listen back to it later. And you just need to give the school 24-hour notice that you plan to do that. Also, when the IEP is done, first of all, don't let them rush you. If you've got 2 hours with an IEP meeting and your questions have not been answered and you still have lots to say, don't allow them to force you to end the IEP meeting. You can continue it another day. So don't feel rushed, don't feel pressure. And also don't feel pressure to sign the IEP that day. I always recommend to my clients, even if they think that the IEP is ideal, take it home, read it carefully to make sure that everything is written there the way you want it to be, and then sign it. So I think that the message to parents is go in prepared, contribute, be a part of the meeting, and don't feel pressured, don't feel rushed when leaving.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my goodness. See, I've been taking notes already. So that's brilliant. Now, you mentioned if you disagree with an aspect of the assessment, then you need to challenge it. But how do I do that? For instance, my son's teacher claimed at 3 that he didn't read. He actually did read. She just gave him books that had no words in it. So in that instance, it was fairly easy to disagree with this lady, because I'm going, how can you say he doesn't read when there's no text on the page? What's he reading? And she's going, well, he has to make up stories. I said, well, making up a story is not reading. These are 2 totally different things in my book. But as a parent, if something comes across on the assessment, if the teacher says something, and in this meeting, that's not your child, how are you going to disagree? What do we need to bring in supporting evidence? How do we get them to make a change if we're the voice of reason?
That raises a couple questions, because there's number one, what goes into the IEP itself, based on what the assessment says, and number two, separate from what's in the IEP, is whether or not you want to challenge the assessment in its entirety, the validity of it. So if you're at an IEP meeting and there's not disagreement as to what an assessment says, that's your opportunity to vocalize it, to get your opinions documented and reflected in the IEP. But if you disagree fundamentally that that assessment is jargon, it's bunk, and it's not appropriate whatsoever, you can challenge it so that it's not even part of the IEP process anymore. You can challenge it so that you can say district did not do an appropriate job and request what's called an independent evaluation, so that you take that excuse me, not that bunk, that other assessment out of the equation and get something that you feel is more reliable. That is a process. It's not something that can be done easily, and there are rules all around that. But Learning Rights, we try to help with that. We have our Tiger program where we teach parents exactly how to, challenge IEPs in their entirety. I'm sorry, assessments in their entirety. We have an education rights clinic that offers brief legal services. So if you have an assessment and you don't know what it's saying or what it means, or if it's good enough, you can bring it to our office and they will help you with that determination. So it's one thing to disagree with an assessment and have the appropriate services reflected in the IEP, and it's separate to challenge that assessment altogether and get one that's more appropriate for your child.
I love that. Thank you so much. Whew. It's already hot off the presses, as they say. Uggy guggy. So you mentioned that you don't have to sign at the end of the meeting, because I know several parents have been pressured into doing that. Do you have to give, is there a specific reason you can give for not signing, or can you just say you're just not ready and I need more time, or I need you to do something else?
You do not have to give a specific reason. You just say that you're going to think about it. You can say you're going to review it. Maybe you're going to review it with someone else to help you, reflect on it better, but you don't need to give a specific reason. If this is the first IEP, services cannot begin until that IEP is signed. So as a parent, you do want to keep that in mind. You don't want to do any unnecessary delay in signing it. If you want services, something has to be signed in an IEP document. But if your child already has an IEP in place and you're not sure this one that's being proposed is appropriate, take the time you need to reflect on it and before signing. And also know you don't have to agree to the IEP in its entirety, the new IEP. There are options. It gets, again, very complicated, but there are options for parents. They can agree to an IEP service. They can agree to the services, but disagree that it's FAPE. In other words, preserve their right to challenge it later. They can agree to increase services from the new IEP, but disagree to any decrease in previous services. This will keep those old services in place. It's what we call stay put. So it's not an all or nothing result with respect to signing the IEP. There are options that parents have. And a lot of times what we teach our clients is you have a little space on the IEP document itself to sign, and it doesn't allow you space for all of these other options that we're talking about. Yes, I agree to this, but no, I disagree that this service should be reduced. As a parent, you have a right to submit additional paperwork that you've prepared, a letter, for example. We call it a parent statement or a declaration that specifies exactly what you're agreeing to and what you're not agreeing to. So there are options, and we're here to help, because I know that sounds very intimidating, and it is. The field of special education is intimidating, but that's why we're here. And knowing what your rights are is the first step. So leaving this conversation, I don't expect parents to be experts. Well, they may already be, but you shouldn't be expected to be an expert and be able to know all the answers. But you're thinking about it and you're wondering and you're learning, and that's all important. That's all vital.
Wonderful. So on that tip, you said you're not expecting parents to be experts in what their children are entitled to. How do we even find out? I mean, if I'm sitting in this meeting and they say that my child needs X, Y, and Z, how do I know? Who tells me outside of do I talk to the teachers before the IEP meeting? Who do I talk to before this so that I really get an understanding of what my child or what services my child should be getting?
Again, look at that assessment and see what the assessment says. Hopefully there's some good information in there. Yes, with respect to speaking with teachers, you can get progress report updates every so often regarding whether or not your child is making progress with respect to certain goals. So that's always a good thing. If you're really just at a disagreement with what the school is offering, at that point, I would recommend consulting with an attorney or a legal services organization. It's always good to have some help at the IEPT meeting. But remember, as a parent, you are the voice for your child. Nobody else should be speaking on your behalf, on their behalf. You are the voice. So if you feel comfortable having somebody there with you at the IEP meeting to make it, a little bit less nerve-wracking, that's okay. But you are the voice. And just be careful, because I know that there are some folks who will hold themselves out as advocates or experts in the field, but they aren't necessarily. So if you really want to know, do I have a case? Is the school really violating my child's rights? Definitely talk to an attorney or talk to someone at a legal services organization, because they will be able to, there's no easy answers ever, but they will be able to guide you in knowing, is this a circumstance where I really want to push the district because they're not doing what is appropriate for my child?
Ooh, nice. So, okay. So I've heard, and I've spoken to advocates in the past, and you were saying that, so advocates are good, but if it's legal knowledge, if we're looking at the LEA or the district not providing the appropriate services, then legal advice would definitely be of benefit. So I'm a brand new parent. I'm starting this process for the first time. So my kids got their evaluation. I'm going to this IEP meeting, but I'm absolutely terrified by the 12 million people that are in this room, who all seem to have an opinion about my child. Is it better that I take an attorney with me? Or is it better that I just take, and I don't mean just, but that I take an advocate who's been through IEPs before?
It's all going to depend. And if you do take an advocate, remember, you're speaking for your child, not that other person. But if you're a new parent to the process, it is very, very daunting, but it is meant to be a collaborative process. Like I said in the beginning, you are an equal team member, so you don't have to necessarily, suit up for a battle from the beginning. You go there and you ask your questions, and you get the information that you need from the school district. And once there is disagreement, then you might want to suit up and get some additional assistance. But from the beginning, give yourself the credit. Know that you know your child better than anybody else, and know that the law protects you and allows you that ability to participate in the process. So it can be intimidating. I know it's easier said than done to just go in there. I do recommend, for example, our Tiger program is parents coming together to share their experience, not to give legal advice to each other, not to give counseling to each other, but just to know that there are other parents who have similar experiences. And that alone gives parents some level of confidence to go into the meetings, because they realize, I'm not the only one experiencing this. I'm not the only one that's in this position. So are so many others. And there's so much power and strength that comes from that knowledge.
Definitely. That is one of my favorite things. Here at Bridges, that's what we find a lot, is that when parents find our school and they come in and they sit and talk to other parents, they go, oh, that happened to you too? Oh, well, this happened to us, and blah, blah, blah. And they begin to identify and realize, because I think often when your child does have a learning challenge, sometimes you're made to feel that you're, I don't know, you're odd and there's nobody else like you, and therefore you're a problem and you should go away. And sometimes I feel that the whole IEP process makes me feel like they just want us to go away. They don't want to bother with us. So I love that. Give yourself the credit that you know the most about your child. I know, though, or I've had experience that I've been in conversations where parents And obviously then they're not meaning to derail you, but they have said, well, my kid has autism and they're getting these services. So is that the recommendation? You know, another autistic kid's getting these services, so therefore my kid should be getting them. Or do we really need to do that deep dive? Because as we know, no two autistic kids are the same. No two kids with ADHD are the same, really. You know, our children bring their gifts differently and they appear differently. So is it better than that a therapist has given you advice so that we really know what's going on with our children? Or can we assume that children who are on the spectrum will need these services? Is it a given?
I say don't assume. Like I said at the beginning, we're working with an IEP, an individualized education program, so that it's specifically uniquely tailored to each individual child. I have come across, or I have heard circumstances where a parent will come to me asking for certain help, saying, my child has speech and language delay. So does my friend's child. They're getting this, this, and this. I want that too. You should not be requesting services for your child based on anybody else, based on what anybody else's child is getting. It should be based only on what your child needs, based on their strengths and based on their weaknesses. So yes, every plan should be individualized, and you know, every child is going to need different services, and it's not driven by the diagnoses. I do have parents who come to me and say, I want the diagnosis of autism in my IEP, but they're not putting it. That's a separate conversation, but what I want to see is, what are the services? What are the services that they're providing? What are the present levels? What are the goals? What are the objectives, and what services are in there? Because to me, that speaks more to the child's needs than a label or a disability.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Definitely. What does the child need? Let's not just label them. Oh, I think that is so key. And particularly for parents of children in our underserved communities, because I know for us, there's a whole stigma about having your child labeled as having a learning difference or needing particular special assistance. So I think it's really great then that instead of just sticking a label on them in this IEP, that we can really get to the meat and bones. So as parents, then we need to be asking for those present levels, asking for services. So it's particular things that our children need assistance with, not just a global title that they're autistic or anything else.
Right, absolutely.
I love that. Hope we're all taking copious notes. So when we get into these meetings now, let's start.
And in particular, you know, there are children that are going to have more than one diagnosis. So again, you're not stuck on the diagnoses, you're stuck on the needs, the abilities, and what services the child will require.
Cool. So stuck on the needs, the abilities, and what services the child should require. See, there was a word there that you said that I don't often hear with an IEP. You said the needs. Oops, the words left my brain. The abilities and the services. Abilities? What do you mean abilities? Do my children have abilities? Sometimes I get the sense that people don't believe that they have any. So I'm really excited that you said that. So in the IEP meeting then, can we be bringing up what the children can do, where our child's strengths are? Absolutely.
Absolutely, because the IEP should reflect the whole child. And I do have families come to me saying, you know, the school district is only commenting on their challenges, only commenting on the things that they cannot do, but my child can do so much more. And so it is important, again, you as parent, be vocal. And when you're talking about the present levels of performance in the IEP, be vocal about what you see as the strengths, because that might help your child learn in other areas. That might contribute to their development in other ways. If I am not necessarily good at something and I'm made to repeat it, I'm not going to get better. But if I like something and I'm able to use that to learn new tools and have new experiences, that's going to work to my benefit. So absolutely, the IEP should paint the picture of the entire child. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate and admire about Bridges, because you do have that focus, that lens through which you see students through their abilities and their strengths. And I think that for some of our parents, it can be heartbreaking, on just a human level. To hear nothing but negative things about your child can be heartbreaking, and it can make you not want to keep going. But you see your child's strengths, and you have ability to make sure that everybody else on the team sees those as well, so that they're respected and honored, and valued in the IEP.
Wonderful. So within then the IEP, if I'm identifying some of my child's strengths and there are services for those things, then I can request those services as well.
You can request services that are, again, appropriate for your child, and appropriate in a way that's going to help them make meaningful progress. So progress in school, but that's not just, academics. It's not just reading and writing. It's also social skills. It's also pragmatics. It's also adaptive skills and functioning. So if there's a service that you've identified that's going to help your child make progress based on their unique needs, the school is obligated to provide it. That's FAPE. And FAPE, free appropriate public education, can be very complex. We do talk about it in our Tiger program. But basically, if the service is appropriate for your child and you can show that it's appropriate, the school is obligated to provide it.
I like it. I like it. You see, and I love the fact that, there's this free appropriate public service that we're supposed to be getting, because sometimes I get a sense that, if you don't have money to pay for things, then our children can't get them. And I just don't understand how that's fair. I don't think children should suffer because I don't have enough money.
Right.
But I'm not going to get on my soapbox because I easily do that. So, I had a really cool question and then it just left me. Never mind. So, but I know though, so you have, is it a 6-month Tiger program?
It's a 9-month and 6-month. It's evolving since COVID. Classes used to be, prior to COVID, classes used to be in person once a month, 3 hours at a time. Post COVID, we now do things for the most part virtually, and we try to keep our classes to about an hour and a half, because then there's just too many distractions going on. And yes, we have our Tiger Know Your Rights, which is our basic, what's an IEP, what is a FAPE, what are assessments, all the things we're talking about, the fundamentals of special education. We impart that knowledge onto parents and give them practical tips on how to exercise them. New to this past year, we have our Tiger Plus program, which is a 6-month program, which you referenced, which Bridges has actually been accountable, has been a part of. And we are so grateful to you for sort of supplementing Know Your Rights. You know your rights. Now what? What makes sense? Let's be informed and intentional about what we're actually going to ask for, about how we actually exercise these rights. So what does it make sense? What's appropriate for my child? And that's where the Tiger Plus comes in. We also have our neuropsychologist, Mariana Solar, who I mentioned earlier. She teaches a series of classes on understanding the disability. So she'll take each disability and break it down for parents. I've heard parents say, she helped me to know my child. She also breaks down assessments, which can be very intimidating. And again, that's helping parents to understand what's actually appropriate. So the fundamental Know Your Rights we give in Tiger beginner, know your rights. But then what am I going to do with those rights? I like to use the analogy of, if you told me I had the right to vote and you give me a ballot and a pen and you just say, okay, you have a right to go fill it out. I'm not informed. I have no idea what I'm doing. I need that extra step. I need that extra bit of information. So that's what our Tiger Plus and Tiger classes with Mariana do.
That's brilliant. I also heard you say the understanding of our children, because I know, or my experience has been, that a lot of parents that we have worked with have later in life been diagnosed as having a learning challenge. So their diagnoses, they didn't get one as a child, but because their child is now exhibiting things and they get tested and stuff, then the parents are beginning to see, oh, well, I do that, or
Right.
I do that, or, oh,
Right.
I have that same thing. And so, but they didn't get that understanding of what that learning challenge means. So I love the fact that through the Tiger program, or through the Learning Rights Center, rather than the Tiger program, parents can find out what a diagnosis is and what it means. I was fortunate to meet a young man called Johnny Agar. He has cerebral palsy, and when he was first diagnosed as a small child, the doctor told his parents that they could read this stack of books that would tell them all the things their kid would never be able to do, or they could just go love their kid. And he is blessed to have amazing parents who chose to love him. And as a result, he has blossomed and is able to do things that apparently nobody with his condition should ever be able to do. And this is a kid who walks marathons, who was told to never, ever walk. And so he and his family are truly amazing. And I was so blessed to meet them. But I love that love your child. And I think as we as parents get to know our children and then can talk to people about our children, I think we have to make sure that we remember to love whoever they are, however they present themselves, and understand that as humans, none of us are the same every day anyway.
Exactly. And our needs evolve over time, or it takes time to determine what those needs are. So, you know, as much as we try to help, there is unfortunately trial and error. Parents may, you know, have all their hopes on one particular service, and then it doesn't necessarily help, but something else will. So the message, I think, is to not give up, to keep trying and keep looking for the answers. We do have a volunteer attorney, a former special education lawyer, Valerie Gilpier, who co-authored a book with her daughter, Emily Groden. Emily was nonverbal autistic. She grew up, spent her first 25 years of life not able to speak. And that was with Valerie being a special education attorney, her husband being an attorney as well, or a judge, I don't remember. They had resources, and they spent all of her early years trying to figure out what she needed in order to be able to vocalize, to express her needs verbally. And once she turned 25, after all those years of special education and services, she learned how to express herself in writing through assistive technology. So my message there is to not give up hope. This young woman who could not express herself, was acting out with tantrums and things because she wanted to be heard, now is a published author. She's at college, and you know, it took time. It wasn't easy. The mom, Valerie, will tell you it wasn't easy. You can read her book. There was heartbreak and challenges, but it took time, and they found out the right recipe for progress.
I love that. Yeah, we talk here at Bridges about the gift of time too. But I think often, though, as parents, we feel that we're supposed to fix everything. Because I know parents come to me and go, you need to fix this. And I'm going, well, I can't fix your child, darling. Broken. But it is a difficult system to navigate. And so I guess having patience, and I loved what you said, we're going to try something, then if it doesn't work, then we'll try something else. So I guess we're looking at the IEP process really as a process then. Yes. Because that first year doesn't solve everything, but the next year we should be making adjustments based on what did work or what didn't work, and that's how we get through the system. Yes, and that's why you have IEPs every year. It should be updated, reviewed, an IEP meeting every year. Annual assessments, triennials should be happening at least every 3 years, because the child's needs are going to change with time. And so you cannot rely on an assessment that's 5 years old to let me know what my child needs and what they're good at, today. And then another thing parents should remember is they don't have to wait though for an IEP meeting every year. They don't have, if they're having concerns regarding their child's progress, don't wait until June to call a meeting. Call a meeting and put it in writing. We'll give you a sample, and the school has 30 days to hold the IEP and hear you out. Hear what your concerns are, and discuss what changes, modifications might we need to make to this contract to help your child make more meaningful progress. And then also with respects to assessments, parents don't have to wait every 3 years. If they want an assessment, they can request one every year. If they feel like their child is rapidly evolving, rapidly changing, things are just too hard to keep track of, the child is just making so much progress or having other challenges, those can be looked at and examined every year by the school district. And going back to what I said before, if the school district does not provide an assessment that's appropriate, parents do have a right to request an independent assessment paid for by the district. There's a process to it, so if a parent has questions on that, come talk to us. I'll put my you're welcome to share my email with folks, and but I just want them to know that that's an option. Cool. So tell people exactly that. We'll share it. It will be in the email that goes out with the recording. But please tell people how they get hold of you. First and foremost, you can email our program at Tiger. I don't know if I can put that in the chat. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Tiger@learningrights.org. That will get you to me, Kim, and Daisy, who I believe may also be on this call. We are the Tiger staff. There's 3 of us. We're small but mighty. We try to do the best that we can with the resources that we have. So you can email us there. You can also go to our website, learningrights.org, and there you can click to find access to our Education Rights Clinic, which is another resource for you. So just to clarify, Tiger is the Know Your Rights program, 9 months of us teaching you what your rights are and how to advocate for your child, so that you can, the school system can be anywhere from 0 to 22. So it's a process, like you said. But sometimes parents need help yesterday. They don't have necessarily 9 months to learn the process and how to be advocates. And that's where our Education Rights Clinic comes along. You can visit them at our website, and there should be a link that families can click on to fill out a request for an intake. And our staff will talk to you, the parent, review your records, and we can give you on the spot information, suggestions regarding how to help your child. So they're 2 separate processes, but if you need information on any of them, feel free to just reach out to us at Tiger. And while the focus of those 2 programs is to self-empower parents to be their best advocates, we do acknowledge that in some circumstances, legal assistance to assist parents in advocating against the district is going to be needed. So we have attorneys on staff who can take cases to challenge the education that's being offered to your child, and all of those services are free of charge. Nice. Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, we did a quick question popped up. If my middle school child is self-diagnosed autistic, the district will probably want a formal assessment before accommodating, correct?
So in order to be eligible for services, there is an assessment that should be done. So the district, yes, will probably want to do an assessment of the child. They're required to do that anytime there's a suspected disability. So the fact that you have told them my child has self-identified, they are noticed. They now have to do that assessment. Even if they come back with something other than autism, your child might still be eligible based on other things. Again, don't get too caught up on the diagnosis at this point, but yes, they are on notice that there's a suspected disability. They have to give you an assessment plan. You have to look at it, agree with it. If you do, turn it in, and then they have to do assessments and hold an IEP within 60 days. So if you've put them on notice, their timelines have been triggered, and they need to start assessing.
Oh. So do the parents have to pay for that, or is that on the district's dime?
That's the district's assessment. If there's a suspected disability, the district has an affirmative obligation to assess the child, an affirmative obligation to go out in the community and find any child who might have a disability and do their assessment. And again, the assessment is not the end of it. If it's not appropriate, if you don't agree with it, there are things you can do afterwards, but that's the first step to getting special education services.
I love that. See, I didn't know that. So we put the district on blast. This is what I think. Check it out. Let me know if I'm right. I think that's brilliant. So again, as parents, we have the power. So because I know for a lot of us, we have like waited for other people to tell us that there is a problem, but not realizing that if we suspect, then we can then put the district on blast and have them do that assessment for us. So that's great. Is it not common for a district to deny the need for an assessment?
If they deny an assessment, there are other things that you can do afterwards to try to get one done. There are different complaint procedures and things that we can follow, but generally speaking, it's a very low threshold. If there's any indication of a disability or reason to suspect one, the district really is on notice. So I actually haven't seen a case where they were justified in not doing an assessment. So if that's the case, I would say reach out to us to see how we might be able to help, because really you don't, as a parent, or the school district doesn't have to have any proof. There just has to be a suspected disability. It's a very low threshold that triggers that obligation to assess the child.
Okay, so that's great news then. So basically, they're not really able to tell you no. They should be looking into it because you've pointed it out, or somebody pointed it out.
And a lot of times what I will hear is, your child doesn't have a disability, we're going to give them a 504 plan, or we're going to do something else. That does not alleviate necessarily the requirement to do an assessment. So every case is different. I cannot give legal advice, but if you're requesting an assessment and it's being denied, I would say talk to somebody about that.
I love
to a lawyer or us.
Yes. So definitely, I like that. And of course, obviously, you can't give legal advice. We're not talking about a specific case. So I'll just clarify that for our viewers. Marisol can give general information, but can't give specifics because we're not talking about one case. And as we know, all of our children are different and therefore their needs are different. So we can't generalize on your needs. However, we can give you tips so that you can go and get those services that you are entitled to. And Marisol, you've been doing a phenomenal job of like giving us all sorts of tips. I am so happy because I now get that sense of parent empowerment that I didn't have before. and I'm hoping too that that our viewers or listeners or whatever are also getting that sense that their voice does count, their voice does matter. I have felt before in these meetings that parents, I don't know, as parents, we felt like more that we were an inconvenience, but now understanding that our voices are important, I think should empower us to go in and be stronger advocates for our students. I can't believe it. Marisol, where did my time go? I just noticed I've only got 5 minutes left. You have just been so amazing, such a wealth of information. So before we wrap up, before I have to say goodbye, is there or are there any last words, any final tips for our parents that you would like to share with us?
I think just, don't be hard on yourself. I think a lot of times parents want all the answers. They want to be able to fix things and get everything right. Everyone knows that you're doing the best that you can. And like we've talked about, it is a process. The IEP is going to evolve, needs are going to change. And that's the way it is. But I think that a group like Tiger really helps in that community. Like I like to say, we're not just the curriculum, we're the community. Talk to other parents who have had the same experience. You don't need to ask them for advice. You don't need to offer advice. You just need to share and know that you're in community, that you're not alone. And that alone, I think, gives parents a lot of what they need to be able to keep moving forward. They're not alone.
We're not alone. We're not alone. Marisol, you are truly amazing. What you and the Learning Rights Centre are doing is absolutely phenomenal. I know there are not enough organisations like Learning Rights out there, but we are extremely grateful to you and your team for the work that you're doing, and hopefully getting the word out so that more people will be in touch so that you can continue to do this amazing work. And hopefully, with these tips, we can now start to make the IEP process a little more comfortable for parents.
Yes.
I mean,
that's the goal.
Yeah, obviously it's a stressful process because we're examining things that are not going right at the time. But I think it'll be wonderful that now we all have some tips. I've been taking notes, and so hopefully other people have taken notes too. It's been a delight to chat with you today. We've all learned so much from you.
Thank you, Maria.
Deepest thanks to you, Marisol. My deepest thanks to you, Sonia, for both of you taking the time to share with us today. It's been a true pleasure finding answers to the questions of our viewers, and I hope that they are now as inspired to use your recommendations as I am. So if during this season my guests have made a difference to you and your family, please email me and share. Our email is crucialconversations@2ecentre.org. I want to be able to share, as Marisol said, with the community. And that's what Crucial Conversations is all about, is about finding our community, finding other people who are having similar experiences and sharing and assisting each other by knowing that we're not alone, right? So next month, you are in for another treat because we are going to meet twice. We are going to meet on May 10th. My guests will be Susan Baum and Robin Shader, who were working with the Tiger program and Marisol. So they will be sharing what strength-based learning really is and how it can help our students. So for those of you that think a project is strength-based, You have a lot to learn. Our second episode will be on May 24th in conjunction with Seng's Mental Health Month. So we will have a panel sharing with us strategies that they use to handle stress and to keep themselves going. One of my guests is actually a student, so I'm sure they'll have some new things for us to try. As a parent and a working person, I know I'm going to be taking lots of notes during that episode. Please join the discussion. Let's continue to make a difference. I'm looking forward to chatting with you next month. So make sure that you join me.
Thank you, Maria. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you,
to
Marisol.
Bridges.
Thank you, Sonia. You're a superstar. I think John's going to do our outro.